Hi everybody, this screencast presents a little tip on how you can simplify the process of writing SpreadsheetML. A question was recently asked of me about the correct way to update the string table. Well, a little tip is that you actually don't have to update the string table when you are inserting values into a spreadsheet or into a workbook. Let me show you what I mean by this. First, I'm going to create a little Excel worksheet. Call it test. I'll open it up and I'll put in three values, AAA, BBB, and CCC. Save that and close it. Now I'm going to start Visual Studio, and then I'm going to drag that workbook onto Visual Studio so we can edit it using the Open XML package editor power tool for Visual Studio. You can get the power tool here. I'll drag test.xlsx onto Visual Studio. First thing let's do is to go look at the worksheet. So I'll open that worksheet that we just created. I'll format the XML and we can see those three values that I just added. What we can see here is that the type here, this T attribute, is set to S, and that indicates that the value in the V element is an index into the shared string table. So if we go look at the shared string table, we can see those values that I just added. I'll format that XML, and there we can see the AAA and BBB and CCC. Well, let's say that we wanted to update the first cell to not have AAA, but instead to have ZZZ. Well, we could go and create another entry in the string table, and we could then update this value to the index of that entry in the string table. But an easier way is we can just change the type to str and change this value to ZZZ. I will now save it. I'll leave it open here in Visual Studio because we're going to want to come back here and take a look at this markup in just a minute. So now if I open test.xlsx, we see that in fact cell A1 does have the value of ZZZ. Now I'm going to make a small change here just to force Excel to save it. If I didn't make any changes, Excel wouldn't necessarily have to save the file. I want to make Excel rewrite the entire XLSX. Let's close that. Now when we switch back to Visual Studio, it tells us that test.xlsx has changed outside the editor. Do we wish to reload it? And yes, we do. And now if I look at the markup for sheet 1, I see in fact that cell A1 has been changed to now use the S data type, which means that value is in the shared string table. And if I go over to the shared string table and format that data, we can see in fact that ZZZ is now an entry in the shared string table. We made our life simpler by just putting that value directly in the cell and changing the data type to str, and then Excel later on did the right thing by merging that value into the shared string table. Now if we were writing a spreadsheet that had 1,000,000 rows and 40 columns and we wanted to optimize this, we very well may want to optimize the process of putting values into the shared string table and managing that whole process. That's a different story. However, if we're writing a run-of-the-mill workbook and worksheet with maybe 100, 200, 500 rows and 10, 20, 30 columns. The amount of optimization that we would gain automatically by updating that shared string table is probably pretty minimal. Instead, we can just make our lives easier by writing those values directly into cells. Well, that's all I'm going to cover in this little screencast on SpreadsheetML.